unanswered questions. I'm looking for a new direction. Live a life of indiscretion. Awareness misdirect. Can you tell
Thank you, and welcome to Tobago CSI. I am your host, Anne-Marie Degazo of the Citizen Security Program. In this episode of Tobago CSI, we'll be exploring the issue of child abuse and neglect. I want to welcome with us our live studio audience. Yeah, you look quite lovely down there. Thank you. Now, as we explore child abuse and neglect, we look at what is abuse. What is the difference between abuse and discipline, the signs and the symptoms of abuse, the cultural norms and values that predispose us to situations of abuse? We'll examine the law, the perspectives from the parent and from the child, and we'll look at solutions. We have with us a technical panel of experts who we will engage in discussing this issue of child abuse and neglect. Joining me right after the break will be clinical psychologist Dr. Dion Imara as we start the discussion. Let's go to break.
Right now I'm talking to myself, but I ain't even hearing me. It's like my voice of reason ran away with my sanity. And by rehearsing these lines in these mirrors, it won't change my destiny. As every time I get the urge to leave, he grab me by my weave and tell me without me he can't breathe. I guess my love is his oxygen. But another day in this house with this man is like inhaling nitrogen. How did I end up sleeping with the enemy?
If you are a victim or perpetrator of domestic violence, please call the Domestic Violence Hotline at 800-SAVE, 800-7283. A message from the Ministry of National Security's Citizen Security Program. Stop the violence and abuse. Stay calm and start thinking.
Remember, we don't want to know who you are. We just want your information. Crime Stoppers. It's safe and it works.
The decisions you make today influence your future. You determine where you want to be. Make the right choice. Stop. Stay calm. Start thinking. A message from the Ministry of National Security's Citizen Security Program.
Thank you, and welcome back to Tobago CSI. We are discussing the issue of child abuse and neglect, and with us today is clinical psychologist Dr. Dion Imara. Let's welcome her on stage. Welcome. Nice to have you with us.
All right, have a seat.
Well, Dr. Imara, thank you for joining us today. Could you tell us a little about yourself? You look quite lovely.
Oh,
though.
thank you, Anne-Marie.
Yeah.
Well, as you know, I'm a clinical psychologist.
Wow.
I was born and raised in England,
Yeah.
and I've been practicing for around 12 years now. My specialism is child and adolescent mental health and psychology.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
So we're talking about child abuse and neglect. So maybe we should start off with trying to understand, how do you know when a child is being abused?
Well, in terms of what to look out for, sometimes it can be very obvious that a child is being abused or neglected, obvious signs, but then there are some signs that are not as obvious. So, for example, we could have a child who is very withdrawn, depressed, could even be self-harming, for example. They could be fearful of their parents. They could not want to go out as much, stop doing the things that they used to do. They could have things like burn marks on their body. They could have marks on their body. They could have broken bones, fractures, unexplained non-accidental injuries, things like that. So it's actually sometimes not as easy to spot it, and therefore the key really is to have that person for the child who has a relationship with them, so that they have somebody who they can confide in and talk to about that.
You know, it's interesting that you're saying that, because when I picture the average child, I mean, they're gonna fall down, they're gonna bruise themselves, and it's pretty easy to say that a lot of the things you describe, particularly the physical injuries, could be the result of normal childhood issues.
That's right.
But you were saying that, and I want you maybe to elaborate a little bit more on that, in terms of where do you zero in to see that there are the changes that's happening in the child? And you talk about the issue of having a relationship with the child. Could you elaborate a little bit more in terms of helping us to identify when it's not just accidental?
Yes, in terms of it not being accidental, that's really a key definition or a key clue to it actually being abuse, because abuse, it would be repeated and sustained, and therefore they would manifest in different ways. You could also see that they have a tendency to be aggressive towards other people as well.
Okay.
Like they might be aggressive to their sibling, to their friends, to their peers, to other people that they are socializing with.
Okay, so it means that we should probably look more closely at persons who we may term bullies.
Oftentimes we find that bullies are also victims of bullying as well. So there is a link there.
Quite interesting, because they may be the ones that we tend to push away and not get help because we feel that they have it together. That's why they're bullying.
That's right. I mean, we often focus on a child's behavior and not really on the underlying causes and what might be going on for that child.
Right. So what then constitutes abuse?
So in terms of what constitutes abuse, I see abuse as fitting into 4 distinct categories. So it's physical abuse. As I mentioned before, you see the cuts, the bruises, the welts, the belt marks left by buckles, punching, kicking, slapping, that kind of thing. You also have emotional abuse, which is like humiliating the child, shaming them, being quite withholding of love, neglectful in terms of emotional warmth. So being very overly critical of that child, calling them names, shaming them. So that's examples of emotional abuse. And then you have sexual abuse, which is to force a child or to persuade a child to engage in sexual acts. And then you have neglect, which is actually, we wouldn't necessarily see neglect all the time as something that's intentional. Sometimes sometimes neglect is not intentional and is dependent on the circumstances of that parent and family. So neglect, examples of that would be like a failure to have enough to eat. So they've got not enough to eat, they don't have the right equipment to go to school, they're being left alone unsupervised, they might you might see them with dirty clothes or very ill-fitting clothes that are perhaps too small for them, not having access to health care, dental care, not sending your child to school.
Whoa, this is like almost an inexhaustible list. It's when you talk about it, and you know, it almost begs the question, you know, why do parents abuse their children? I mean, we're all happy when we see the bouncing baby. I think most parents are. And there is that period of nurturing and love and so on. But that changes to abuse. When you consider a child will punch their child or cuff them or give them a black eye or burn their hands or so on, why do parents resort to abuse?
I think there are many factors that come into play that explain possible reasons why parents resort to abusive behaviours towards their children. For example, it could be a practice that they came up with in their family, so they're used to it happening in their family. It was in fact done to them. It's what they know, and it's possibly backed up by other people around them who actually approve of what they're doing as well. So it could well be a case of, what was done to them, they're now doing to their child. So there's that. And then there are other factors such as family stress. If you're a parent who's going through some problems, you've got money worries, you've got debt problems, you might be a single parent, you're isolated from family or supportive friendship groups, you can find that life is taking a toll on you, and you can well therefore take it out on your child. So you can have that going on as well in terms of
So
life.
is there a relationship between domestic violence and child abuse, and how does that work?
Yes, I would say that there is a relationship. Certainly research has confirmed that, for example, if a child is in a home where domestic violence is taking place, they are actually likely to also be victims of the violence as well. So they might be witnessing the spousal abuse, and that in itself is actually emotionally abusive for the child to be witnessing that. And then in some cases they go on to be physically abused as well, and emotionally abused, or even sexually abused as well, by the same perpetrator who is perpetrating against their parent. Also, when that child grows up, because it's become such a norm to them in their environment, they might grow up to also perpetrate violence in their intimate relationships at a later date. So we find that cycle there too. And also, it doesn't mean all the time that you would become the perpetrator. You could also be somebody who is more likely to tolerate the abuse being done to you when you're in romantic relationships. So it can predispose you to also become a victim of domestic violence.
So it is important then, even in domestic violence situations, to ensure that the children are counseled and taken care of?
Absolutely, because they're very much affected. I mean, even if they're not directly touched in terms of the abuse, the fact of having to witness somebody in their family be beaten, be humiliated, be shamed, that's actually quite a traumatizing experience for children to go through, and they can become quite symptomatic themselves in terms of how it affects their emotional well-being and their ability to cope.
Well, Dr. Imar, we have in our audience today students from Speyside High School, Signal Hill Secondary School, and MIC. Let's hear what they have to say about what child abuse and neglect is, why parents abuse their child, and is there a difference between abuse and discipline? Let's hear from them now. I think we have a young man from Signal Hill Secondary.
Good morning. Well, my name is Dexter Kuso, and I believe that child abuse is when, like, a parent abuses his privilege or his or her privilege to discipline a child and goes overboard by doing it and making a child feel like shame in public or disrespecting a child when his or her friends are around. And I think that there's some reasons why parents or guardians abuse a child is when the child is not wanted or is not theirs, or if it's a stepchild, or you know, like they don't want the child around to show them that they don't want them.
Great point. Let's hear from the young lady from MIC in the back.
Hi, my name is Akila Chance, and I think abuse is when the parents beat the child, leave marks on the skin, right? And abuse is like when they see their colleagues doing it to their child, and they think that that is the right thing to do. Like they grow up with their mother beating them, you know. And neglect is when they don't want them around. Like you're scorning them, you're telling them that they're ugly, you know.
Right.
So I think that is neglect.
Okay, good, excellent. In the back, behind you.
Hi, my name is Makis Henry. I would answer in reference to what Dr. Dion would have said. No, neglect is a very big field, and a lot of children are faced in that factor. So in my perspective, I would say that neglect is something that It is within the child and also within the parents. Okay, as Dr. Dion would have said, a lot of parents face financial stress and they would take it upon themselves to, well, leave the child alone. The child go to school feeling as though, well, they're living alone. They have no one to talk to, no one to turn to. If they have problems, they can't speak to anyone. Even though they choose to speak to someone, they would not feel comfortable. So in their own skin, it's like they're not comfortable at all with living with that parent or guardian. So that's my logic of it.
All right. And let me ask all of you generally to answer. Is there child abuse and neglect in Tobago? Yes. All right. That's a good place to go to break. And when we return, we will hear some comments from Dr. Imara, and we have two other guests who will join us on set. Social worker Sharon Gooding-Williams and our police officer, Constable Damian Mills. Let's go to break.
I'm Samantha John.
I am Nadia Batson.
The incredible Myron B.
I'm K.I. Chucky Gordon.
Hi, my name is Sheriff.
And we are Freetown.
And I'm urging each and every citizen of our beautiful country.
It's time for us to put a stop to crime and violence in Trinidad and Tobago once and for all.
In Freetown, we believe that every citizen has the right to life.
We need to be responsible not only for ourselves but for others as well.
I think the only way to counteract any kind of fear is to inject love.
We have the power to stand up, to unite, to stay positive, and to win back our country.
Build a culture of lawfulness, peace, respect, love, harmony.
The Citizen Security Program.
Stop the violence and abuse.
Stop the violence and abuse.
Stay calm.
Stay calm.
Stay calm.
Stay calm and start thinking.
Start thinking.
And start thinking.
A message from the Citizen Security Program. Stop the violence and abuse. Stay calm and start thinking.
No, I'm not ready for that.
No. Stop. Stay calm. Start thinking.
Okay, cool.
I'll later.
A message from the Ministry of National Security's Citizen Security Program.
Remember, we don't want to know who you are. We just want your information. Crime Stoppers. It's safe and it works.
Thank you very much. And welcome back to Tobago CSI. We have joining us on set right now Constable Damian Mills of the Child Protection Unit and our social worker, Ms. Sharon Williams Gooding. Let's welcome them on set. How are you doing? Welcome. Sharon, welcome, Sharon. Thank you for being All right, please have a seat. Okay, thank you for joining us on set. And when we started the show, and as you came on, you saw a clip that was being aired, and I would want to get your reactions to that, in addition to the comments that we had from our students. But before we go there, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, Sharon? Hear you?
Okay, so first of all, thank you for having me, Anne-Marie. I'm a social worker by profession, presently psychiatric social worker, but I'm generically trained. I've been practicing for about 17 years now. Okay, so that gives you a clue to my age, doesn't it?
Right.
Yeah, and I'm really passionate about children's issues, women's issues. Yeah, because I think that we really experience too much violence with respect to women and children, and it really impacts us as a society.
Yeah, Sharon, I'm really happy to have you with us today. I know we've had long-standing interactions and so on. And I think you're doing quite well within this sector, and I know it comes from the heart.
Thank you.
Right, Constable Mills, tell us about yourself.
I'm Damian Mills. I'm a police constable attached to the Child Protection Unit within the Tobago Division. I have been there since the start of the unit back in 2015, May. I'm someone who loves children, and I believe and I embrace the fact that children need a voice and they also need to be protected.
Right.
So as far as I'm concerned, I'm going to do my best,
Yes.
along with my other colleagues, to ensure that children are protected in this country.
Good. All right, thank you, Officer Mills, for joining us. Dr. Imara, I want to go to you. Now, the clip that we are seeing on screen now, it's typical of what we heard our children describing before we went to break about the abuse. Could we get your reactions?
It's actually quite painful to watch this. We have to think about what's going on here for the child and also for the parent, who you can see is pretty much out of control in this situation.
Yeah. And I know before the break we talked about the embarrassment. We talked about the stress that parents are under as some of the reasons why parents abuse. Sometimes that it may not be on purpose that it's being done. And parents, as you clearly saying, people lose control. But some of this is embedded within the practices that we consider to be a normal part of our culture. So, Sean, I want to bring you in here to probably comment on that.
So, if we look at our video, let's say this was happening in a public arena. What do we think might be some of the responses we may get from bystanders? Yeah? So you may very well have a large segment of people saying, she looked for that, yes, you are the mother, yes, is that some of them want? You know, so in the society, in culture, physical abuse, corporal punishment, it's endorsed. And then we hear a person saying as well, so you hear people saying, well, I was raised like that. When I was small, I get licks, and look how I turned out now.
Right.
You know, the jury can be out on how you turned out, but that's their belief that they turned out well. And because they turned out well, that reinforces how they parent. So they parent by beating their child as well. And, well, of course, we have culturally how we see children. How do we see children? Do we see children as having a voice? Do we see children as being able to express? Do we encourage expression of feelings? So a child does not like something. Can the child tell the parent or caregiver, mommy or daddy or auntie, I don't like how you spoke to me? That would be considered.
Well, I think you're calling some things there one day. Where do you live?
Would that be considered rudeness, or would that be seen as the child's right to voice their feelings?
Yeah.
Do parents and caregivers apologize to children? By and large, some do, but by and large, you may not find that caregivers apologize or see themselves as having to account to a child for their actions.
Okay.
Yeah? Let me just share this with you briefly. I know that when I see children in my practice, one of the things that disturbs me at times is that there would be reports, so the children would report that their parent or their caregiver, after they would have come out of the session, would question them. So they would ask them what was said. They would even try to correct their responses, tell them what they should have said, what to say the next time. So even in that context...
So there is always a level of control of the child.
And that's what I want to bring out, that a lot of the times in our culture, we see children as objects to be controlled, right? And we do not see the parenting role as a role where we guide. Yeah, where we gently guide the children, guide them into making choices.
Right.
Yeah, guide them into expressing feelings, knowing how to express their feelings in an appropriate way, right? Helping them to understand that it's okay if you feel like this.
Right. I think this is a good place to bring in Officer Mills. I'm sure that there are some laws that are being breached here, Officer Mills. So from your perspective in the Child Protection Unit, maybe we can start with what rights does the child have here? What are the rights of the child? And what are the provisions under the law to protect the child?
All right, well, the rights of the child here, first and foremost, is to be protected from harm, from danger, on all aspects. Now, when you look at that video, you can see several offenses coming out there. Yeah. One, the parent might call it discipline. However, if it's something like what's happening there, it's what we call, or what the law terms, cruelty. Okay. Now, cruelty is according to Section 4 of the law, which says a person with responsibility for a child must not expose, or they shall not willfully expose the child to mental, physical, or emotional harm. And you're seeing that there because I think, I am aware of this video, and I think it was also posted on social media.
Yes.
So you have the child being abused there because at no point in time must a child, at the end of being disciplined, need to seek medical attention.
Okay.
From what's happening there, you most likely would have cuts, you will have bruises, you will have welts. Yeah. And that's blatant abuse. Right. It's cruelty. That's one. Two, the video being posted on Facebook. As I said, we are aware of the video. And that's emotional abuse.
Yes.
You know, it's placing a child on some sort of psychological torture. You know, right. I have friends. When my friends see this, I'm going to school. Yeah. You know, and a child in a situation like that needs help, needs intervention. Right? Those are
okay.
really points that need to be worked on.
How do we protect the children? What's the provisions under the law? I mean, apart from that, what penalties would a parent in this situation face? Are there any?
Yes, there are penalties. Well, according to the Section 4 of the new Act, and as I said, new Act, this Act came into being on the 23rd of May, 2015. So it's a relatively new Act.
Right.
And Section 4 of this Act deals specifically with cruelty.
Yes.
Now, cruelty encompasses several other aspects of what parents do to children that can amount to abuse, right? So the child must be protected from neglect. Yeah. The child must be protected from physical torture, physical assault, what's happening there. Yeah. Must be protected from psychological assault. Yeah. And if something like that or what's happening there come to our knowledge, we will now launch an investigation. We would interview the child. Right. We would make observations of the child's physical appearance. Yes. And if needed, we would take the child or have the child be carried to the hospital for a checkup. And the parent will now be arrested and charged for cruelty to children or a child to that child.
So there are provisions to treat with that. Dr. Imara, I want to come back to you. Obviously, something is going on with the parent here, psychologically, the state of mind of this parent. And when parents feel that they reach this stage when they have no alternative to beating, we know that there are alternatives. And we would have posted some earlier. I'm asking if they can bring that up again in terms of what are the alternatives that parents may have than resorting to this kind of a violence against their children. Maybe if you can just highlight one or two for us.
Well, in terms of what is true discipline, because I'm sure that is what this mother here is attempting to demonstrate towards her child. Unfortunately, the way she's going about it is just not effective.
Right.
Beating a child like in that way does not work. It would rarely stop a child from misbehaving in the future, which basically means that you would have to keep on beating the child and get harder and harder to try and get the same effect. And therefore, that's when it's now bordering on child abuse. Yeah. When it's a situation like this, you're not really teaching that child anything except to fear you. And possibly not, it damages your relationship with that child. So they will not see you as somebody that is a safe person, approachable person to talk to share their feelings about something. And you can find that your relationship with your child becomes more and more distant to the point where they don't come to you for much at all, because that relationship of trust and nurturing is being damaged by this abuse that's happening. Beating doesn't work because it's not teaching the child how to solve problems in a constructive way. You're basically modeling to that child aggression. So therefore, if your child goes on to be aggressive to other people, or indeed to yourself, well, it's kind of been modeled to them that that's the way to go because it was done to them. So you're kind of setting up your child to do unto others as was done to them. The other thing, as I said before, it seems that this parent is out of control, and it would suggest that she has very few constructive ways of treating with child misbehaviour. So I would suggest that some positive parent strategies is necessary as an alternative, which helps to foster a good parent-child relationship, which helps to help the parent think about how they're going to deal with consequences logically and in time, even before the misbehaviour occurs. You would want to set expectations for your child, you know, what is right, what is wrong, how to encourage good behaviour, the behaviour you want to see, by the use of praise and encouragement and small rewards perhaps. Children really benefit from that type of approach, but also when they're doing the wrong thing, how you're going to treat with that in terms of sensible consequences that doesn't damage your relationship with your child. So for example, if a child has broken, willfully broken something that belongs to you, you know, you can beat them senseless, but what's that going to achieve? Let's think about whether they can, you know, how will they make reparations for what they've broken? Can you take some money from their allowance to help pay for the damages? Can they do extra chores? Will they be able to see what's happened there and apologise and make good? Those things are actually more likely to
I
teach
think
the
you're
child the
saying
lesson.
some things there that kind of link with what Sharon was saying earlier in terms of respecting the child, treating the child as a human being, listening to the child and bringing those alternatives. And so maybe if we can go back, I want you to link that, Sharon, in your experience as a social worker. How does that fit in with the whole cycle of abuse of the child? Is there a cycle? Is there a cyclical arrangement, given what Dr. Imari was saying, that the child who is abused may grow up to be an abuser themselves? Could you elaborate a little bit more in that, in your experience in the context of working in Tobago and how that happens?
Oh, well, certainly from my perspective, I've seen it in practice. Where over and over again, children who come to us who have been abused, when you do the history, the social history, you oftentimes find that the parent or caregiver has been abused as well, and therefore is perpetrating this abuse on the child. And while we have I'm not aware of any data in terms of research in Tobago. The research that has been done in other countries bears this out, that approximately 1/3 of persons who have been abused as children go on to abuse their children, right? So, but it therefore speaks to 66% or thereabout of persons who do not do that, or who do not go on to be abusers. So therefore, it can also say to us that we can red flag some things. All right, in terms of what we put in place and be more proactive. All right, so if we are saying that the research bears this out, do we then target persons? And when I mean target, of course, you know how I speak to it, in terms of having parenting programs in communities, because this is what I think would shape our society and protect our children in a different way. Yes, the law is there, but that is after the fact. And we need to really have preventative measures. So do we, for example, recognize that stress can be a related a related issue in terms of abuse. I heard somebody in your audience earlier would have said that the person, they don't want the child, or it appears as if they don't want the child. Yeah, so persons who present with those kinds of issues, can they be red flagged? Right? And be counseled or be in an environment where they get more support. Do we have, for example, what supports do we have for our teenage mothers before and after pregnancy? Do we prepare them for parenthood? Yeah, because for a lot of them, they accidentally walked in to parenting,
and they're not prepared for parenting.
Therefore, they're not
so the
prepared.
stresses associated with parenting often, you're saying, rears its head as abuse.
Because parenting is a tough job, even when you're well resourced and well supported.
Much less
when you're not.
Okay, well, I want to bring in Officer Milsey, and you tell me, because certainly from your position at the Child Protection Unit, maybe if you can give us an idea of how the abuse and neglect of the child is rearing its head in Tobago, and then from your unit, who is charged with protecting the child or the interests of the child, how do you do that?
Well, one would wonder, before the establishment of the Child Protection Unit, what used to happen?
Yeah.
Where would children go? Where would persons go to report cases of abuse, in children? And who do they go to?
Right.
Since we have been in existence, we have had several reports of child abuse. We have even responded to reports where parents are operating very much in a similar fashion as to what we have just witnessed. We would have had cause to remove children from those homes because we do have the power under the law to remove these children and bring in the Children's Authority that would now take over. We work with Ms. Gooding and her team, and we try our best to provide counseling when necessary, and for offenses that come out, we investigate and we bring the parents or guardian before the court to answer according to law.
The realities of it is hitting home. So I want you to think about it. We're going to ask you, after we come back from this break, we'll entertain some questions from our studio audience. But I'd like you to think, we need to find some solutions. What do we do about these hurting children? What's in the system that's available for them? How do they get help? Where do we go from here as a Tobago community to end this abuse and allow our children to be children? We'll take a break now.
Got an unanswered question. I'm looking
The decisions you make today influence your future. You determine where you want to be. Make the right choice. Stop. Stay calm. Start thinking. A message from the Ministry of National Security's Citizen Security Program.
Remember, we don't want to know who you are. We just want your information. Crime Stoppers. It's safe and it works.
Kisha, you know this girl coming here? Who's that? I can't remember her name. But if you hear the kinds of things this girl is saying about you.
Serious? Like what?
All kind of things.
Go study it. We go fix that. I hear you talking about me.
You hear me talking about
huh?
Don't worry, y'all back up. Y'all back up here. Y'all back up.
Stop the violence and abuse. Stay calm. Start thinking.
People talk, yes.
The Ministry of National Security's Citizen Security Program.
Live a life of indiscretion, awareness misdirected.
And welcome back to Tobago CSI. We are chatting about child abuse and neglect, and we're in this segment where we'll be entertaining questions from our social media and from our audience. So we had a question coming in from social media before the show, and we'd like to pose it to our panel right now.
Good morning. My name is Khadijah Jofield. I am from Hope. My question is, what constitutes child neglect, and is there a relationship with abuse?
Okay, well, Dr. Imara, I want to pose it to you. I know we handled it before in the show, but if there is anything in there that you want to just re-highlight about it that's significant.
Yes, in a nutshell, child neglect is the failure to adequately meet a child's needs for safety, for care, for supervision. It's that sort of thing. So examples would be, you know, not having enough to eat, not having the access of education, not being sent to school, not having the right clothes for, you know, that kind of thing. It would be about being left home alone and they're not of an age where that is acceptable to do so. It's those sorts of things.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. So we want to go to our audience now, and I think we have about 3 questions that you want to ask. Gentleman in front.
My name is Dexter Kuso, and my question is, if things get so bad that the child, like if the abuse gets so bad in a home that the child have to leave the home to go to one of the homes, does a child, parents or guardian have to supply for the child needs?
Okay, so
all right.
Officer?
We have had instances where we would have removed the children from homes, and what happens is that when we remove children, most of these homes are government owned and operated, and others are privately owned. For those that are government owned and operated, you can have the judge would order that the parent or parents so provide for the children. And in cases where the children are placed there by the court, once it's a government operated home, the home handles about 90 to 95% of providing for these children. However, the parents are not barred or restricted from, you know, bringing stuff like school clothes. They might have little toiletries that they might want to bring for the children. They have that opportunity where they can do that. Yeah.
Okay, good. We have another question.
My name is Sean Lovell, and my question is, if the parents don't provide for the child, what could happen to them?
Okay.
All right. Now, if it is that the court had ordered that the parent or parents provide for the child and they fail to so provide, well, then they breach a court order, and they could be charged for breach of a court order. They could be find themselves in a position where they have to answer and face a penalty according to law. Because if the court says, listen, you have to, or you are ordered where you must provide for these children or this child, if they fail to do so, taking into consideration the economic status of the parent or parents, the court will consider that. So they may make that judgment that the parent have to produce or say about their children whilst at the home, as well as they might not. But if the parent or parents have been ordered by the court to do so and they fail to do so, then they will have to answer according to law. They can be charged.
Okay,
for breach
great.
of court order.
Thank you, Officer Mills. We have one more question.
Hi, my name is Makis Henry. My question is based on social workers at high schools. Okay, when a student is faced in this calamity or in that extensive abuse activity as seen, when the child reaches out to the social worker, how does the child know that their information or what they tell the social worker is safe and private in consequences of other peers or teachers knowing what goes on in their home without feeling embarrassed or shame? How do they feel and stuff like that?
So one of the things in building a relationship with the student, the social worker should explain that their profession bounds them, they are ethically bound to keep your information, so not to disclose your information. They would also explain, however, that there are times that they have to. So, for example, if you, the student, were to tell the social worker that you have been sexually abused, the law demands that the social worker must report that. All right? So the social worker is ethically bound by their profession, but there are some things that they have to disclose. But the disclosure is not to make what we say commerce. The disclosure is always to help you, all right, to address the situation, okay? If most social workers also belong to bodies, all right, so if you find that a social worker has taken your information and shared it with somebody who is not supposed to have that information, you can report the social worker to their body, all right, and they can be disciplined.
Okay. Interestingly, you know, that we have the kinds of regulation, and we know that in the field, sometimes children may not come forward and report abuse because they feel that their information is not private and confidential. Is that so? Children in the audience? Yeah? So let me ask, are there other reasons why children may not come forward and report abuse when they are being abused? Anyone care to volunteer and answer?
Hi, my name is Ratisha Douglas, and I think reasons why children don't want to disclose those kind of stuff is because they are ashamed and fear that if it gets disclosed, the parents might do them something, something like that.
Interesting.
And there is also the fear as well that they may be removed from the family that they know and they care about. So there's the trauma of that as well. There's also the trauma of being blamed.
Right.
Yeah, and being seen. How are they also seen by the society?
Yeah.
Because everybody now, even the court process where the child has to go to court,
difficult.
It can be difficult and traumatic.
Quite a heavy burden and responsibility being placed on children.
Yeah.
So we want to thank our studio audience for your questioning and participating. I think you've been doing really well in the show. And to ask you on our panel, maybe to give your closing comments as we wrap up. We're running out of time, unfortunately. But what are your closing comments?
Yes, closing comments. Child abuse and neglect is a very important topic that we must address and not allow to slip into obscurity. We have to place it on the agenda whenever we can, wherever we can. We need to raise awareness about abuse. We need education. We need to support parents to be the best parents that they can be and provide meaningful support services that are consistently available for them to access in order to stamp this abuse out.
Okay, excellent. And Sharon, in your closing comments, could you probably just highlight where we can get help, where children can go to get help?
Okay. So when we know about the abuse, and we recognize that a lot of the abuse we don't know about. Yeah. So when we know about the abuse, the first port of call would be to report it to the Children's Authority or the Child Protection Unit or any police station. From there, a series of things can take place in terms of the hospital being involved, pediatrics, the medical social workers, the court system, the Child and Adolescent Center, in terms of counseling. You have, if the child has to be placed in care, you have social services in terms of some supports coming in, right? So there are a few.
There are systems available.
Yes,
okay.
but a lot of it is not preventative.
Right.
We wait until the issue and we address the issue when it happens.
Okay, excellent. So, Officer Mills, your closing comments.
I want to talk a bit on corporal punishment, because as we go forward, as we talk to persons, we talk to the public, we interview persons, we get the distinct idea that persons are generally unaware that corporal punishment is a breach of law. And I would also like to inform persons that the law, Section Act 12 of 2012, it is readily available on the internet. All you have to do is type it in, Trinidad and Tobago, and it's there to download in PDF format.
Right.
If you download that law and you turn to Section 4, subsection 6 and 7, you will see that corporal punishment must or can only be done by the parent or legal guardian. So therefore, teachers, other professionals, other persons, they do not have permission according to law to administer corporal punishment or beating to children. However, parents that are administering corporal punishment to children, it must be done reasonable. For example, as we were seeing in the video, that's not reasonable, that's abuse, blatant. Right? As I said before, after having received corporal punishment or licks from a parent, this child must not be in a position where he or she needs to seek medical attention.
Right.
It's as plain as that.
Oh, quite a lot of food for thought. More and more education needs to happen. Oh, definitely.
Right.
Well, we must take a break now. When we return, we do our wrap-up of our show. Thank you for listening to Tobago CSI.
I'm Samantha John.
I am Nadia Batson.
The incredible Myron B.
I'm K.I.
Chucky Gordon.
Hi, my name is Sheriff. And we are Freetown.
And I'm urging each and every citizen of our beautiful country.
It's time for us to put a stop to crime and violence in Trinidad and Tobago once and for all.
In Freetown, we believe that every citizen has the right to life.
We need to be responsible not only for ourselves but for others as well.
I think the only way to counteract any kind of fear is to inject love.
We have the power to stand up, to unite, to stay positive, and to win back our country.
Build a culture of lawfulness, peace, respect, love, harmony.
The Citizen Security Program.
Stop the violence and abuse.
Stop the violence and abuse.
Stay calm.
Stay calm.
Stay calm.
Stay calm and start thinking.
Start thinking.
And start thinking.
A message from the Citizen Security Program. Stop the violence and abuse. Stay calm and start thinking.
Remember, we don't want to know who you are. We just want your information. Crime Stoppers. It's safe and it works.
The decisions you make today influence your future. You determine where you want to be. Make the right choice. Stop. Stay calm. Start thinking. A message from the Ministry of National Security's Citizen Security Program.
One bite. I want to play.
Oh, you can do that, boy. Oh, you can do that, boy.
Stop the violence and abuse. Stay calm. Start thinking. The Ministry of National Security's Citizen Security Program.
Live a life of indiscretion.
Thank you. And welcome back to Tobago CSI. We chatted a lot about child abuse and neglect this episode. And right now is about the time where we want to show appreciation to our live studio audience. So we have a special someone out there who's going to receive a gift voucher from our I Say You. I Say You. I Say You. Come on up here. Yay! Welcome. Now you would notice that I'm wearing a special fancy glasses here, which is also from I Say You, but this one is my own. But you get a special voucher from I Say You. Tell us your name.
Marquise Henry.
And Marquise, what class are you in?
5A1 at Speyside High.
All right, congratulations.
Thank you
for
very
being
much.
here at Tobago CSI. There you are, this is yours. Okay, and there you have it. We're wrapping up this episode of Tobago CSI. I'm your host, Anne-Marie De Gazo. This episode was brought to you courtesy the Citizen Security Program. And remember, as we leave today, to share the love, stop the violence, abuse, stay calm, and start thinking. And right now, we want to bring on set our breakout artist for today, Miss Cameron Bruno. Welcome, Cameron Bruno. Welcome. All right. So do your thing.
I'm not sure if you know about instruments, how they become therapy, how you become one with whatever you play. When you blow, your DNA stranded breath wraps around each hole to make beautiful music. You see, I know a girl, and while all rooms have 4 walls, hers has 4, with a door that locks from the outside. Locked in, boxed in, no window to look out of. She can't see any more bright days. She can never get the perfect key. Nevertheless, she worked tirelessly. She's stuck in a room full of instruments. Some she doesn't know how to play. Her father, she calls him Maestro, because he loves to use his hands with a baton to send messages that never escape his tongue. You see, actions speak louder than words. But it wasn't for discipline, and she had to obey and play all the instruments that she doesn't know. Her manuscript was a blank canvas of skin, decorated with black and blue lines she can't put notes on, but she only knows letters that fit the scale. She was in there all alone. And I'm not sure if you ever witnessed an orchestra and a collection of sounds that are made, but the faster the maestro's hand moved was the louder the instrument plays, but no one was there to hear. No one was there to clap in the audience. The claps that were heard was his hand on her back. The guitar was the loudest, as her vocal cords were ringing at the highest degree. No strings attached is supposed to be the theme of a family. So why is this guitar his favorite instrument to play when he uses it forcefully? These 4 walls trap the symphonic orchestra of a scream. She played her trumpet, and she blew that trumpet so loud, but no one could hear her. They didn't believe that her child father was a molester. I mean, Maestro. It was a family tradition. And even when you asked him what was his favorite song to play, he said all songs that could go in a minor. He loved to play songs that could be played in a minor. He loved a minor. He loved a minor. He loved minors. And it was a major problem. Thank you.
Retrospection, got an answered question. I'm looking for a new direction. Live a life of indiscretion, awareness misdirected. Can you tell me what's the lesson?